Home Assistant is arguably the most user-friendly smart home system thanks to its open source and DIY system. However, being DIY might be a bit of a learning curve for users, especially those who are just starting. We've compiled a few Home Assistant tips to aid in setting up comprehensive home automation. Today, we'll discuss Home Assistant full beginner tips, best hardware to buy and installation guide. 5. Physical construction. First of all, we'll demonstrate how to install and use Home Assistant on a Raspberry Pi. In this day and age, Home Assistant can be loaded into computers, NAS storage drives, and a plethora of other gadgets. That being said, why use Raspberry Pi? Well, stay tuned, because we'll explain later why we are choosing to install Home Assistant on a Raspberry and using it in tandem with an SSD drive. For now, let's get started with the physical building of the device. An SSD to USB converter for installing Home Assistant onto the SSD and an SD card for use in an SD card reader are all that are required for this task. The Home Assistant guide will provide you with an overview of the setup process, but manuals are sometimes challenging to follow, which is why we are here to help. Now, 2 thermal adhesive stickers are included in the Pi case. First, you want to attach them to the central processing unit and RAM. Once the fan is in place over the port, you may connect the USB or Ethernet wire to it. The next step is to plug the large thick wire into the farthest jacks. You have the wrong end of the plug-in if there is no power. Next, you should plug the fan wire into its corresponding port and the other cables to the respective ports as shown in the manual. Although the menu includes instructions for setting it up, doing so may prove challenging for novice users, but it's best to learn to handle these situations on your own. If you find yourself in a tough one, don't hesitate to seek the advice of an expert. You can learn everything you need to know about Home Assistant by subscribing to our channel and watching our subsequent tutorial videos. 4. Installation on SSD. Moving on, the Raspberry Pi with its low power consumption and small footprint like the size of a credit card is objectively a better choice for your Home Assistant, not to mention its ease of use and low cost. As quoted by Thorin Klosowski from the New York Times Wirecutter, with just a bit of know-how and curiosity, you can use it to make a retro gaming console, a robot brain, a smart home sensor, or even a fully functional Alexa-compatible speaker. Installing Home Assistant onto the SSD is the next step. Now, you might wonder, if MicroSD cards are so standard, then why use a solid-state drive? The reason is simple. The SSD drive offers superior durability and much improved speeds for writing and reading, both of which will come in handy on your journey. To add Home Assistant on the SSD, the software Raspberry Pi Imager should be installed once you connect your SSD disk to a computer's USB connection. This is compatible with Mac OS X and Linux distributions. Activate it by opening it and granting the appropriate permissions. Proceed to select the respective buttons: Operating System, Other Specific Purpose OS, Home Assistant and Automations, Home Assistant, and pick your Pi. To write to an SSD, select the storage option, then SSD, and click Write. Screw the SSD drive into a Nintendo cartridge and place it inside the case once Home Assistant has been written to it. 3. Installing MicroSD. Also, the vast majority of Raspberry Pis have their MicroSD card set to boot first on Home Assistant rather than the SSD. If that is your case, here's an easy fix. Click Choose OS on your Raspberry Pi management and scroll down to the bottom till you reach Miscellaneous Utilities. Just click on Bootloader, then choose USB Boot from the drop-down menu. If you have an SSD drive plugged into a USB port, this will allow you to boot from that device. To access the MicroSD card, select Choose Storage from the menu. Select Write and then Yes. This will delete everything on the MicroSD card. The SSD drive is now being used to boot your Home Assistant. If you have a Zigbee or other device that needs to communicate wirelessly, you can plug in the Conbi stick. If you choose this path, you'll need to, later on, integrate it into your Home Assistant. We'll soon be covering in depth how to integrate Zigbee gadgets with your Home Assistant, so stay tuned. 2. Setting up Home Assistant on website. After that, head on over to homeassistant.local8123 in your web browser. The page may take some time to load, so you'll need some patience. There should be a Preparing Home Assistant message once it finishes loading. Preparing typically takes about 5 minutes, but could take 20 minutes depending on your internet speed. After the page is automatically refreshed, you can make your first user account. You'll need to give your new Home Assistant installation a name after you've set it up your login credentials. The next step is to tell Home Assistant where you are clicking the Detect button. Do a quick Google search for elevation to find out what you should put in for your elevation. This will aid in your sunrise and sunset automation, that is, adapting your shade to the local daylight hours by syncing with your location. If you are not comfortable sharing all your information with Home Assistant, you can opt out. Still, Home Assistant is anonymous and reliable to encrypt your data, so we recommend doing it. How do you feel about giving Home Assistant access to all your information? We certainly don't mind. How about you? We would love to hear from you, so share your thoughts in the comment section. 1. Adding Zigbee devices and connecting to mobile devices. Now, all of the gadgets that are currently connected to your network will be discovered by Home Assistant. This is where you can create rooms and notify Home Assistant where all your gadgets are located. Now, you can turn your automation system on and off from a central Home Assistant dashboard that also provides an overview of everything connected to them. If decentralizing home automation systems was an objective, that objective would have been met. You'll need a Conbi stick linked to your Home Assistant now if you wish to add Zigbee devices. To achieve this, head to the Settings menu, then pick Devices and Services, then click Add Integration, and finally select Add Zigbee Device. Your Zigbee gadget, so long as it's in pairing mode, should appear on your Home Assistant dashboard automatically. Also, if you want to connect to a mobile device, download the Home Assistant app on your mobile device, and then sign in using the credentials you just provided to add it to your smart home setup. With over 1,500 integrations available on Home Assistant, there is still so much to learn. But we believe this information would be enough to make your transition to smart home equipment less daunting. If you are struggling on a different platform like the Amazon Echo, fret not, because we've got you covered on that too. You can watch our next video, Best Tips and Tricks to Set Up Echo Show 8, 2nd Gen Setup, Echo Show 8 Tutorial. Thanks for watching.